Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live with NORML. I'm JM Padini, the Development Director for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, September 13th, 2024. You know what that means? It's time for me to try to answer all of your burning questions live. Hey, thanks for joining us. Take a quick second wherever you're watching to hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so you never miss when NORML goes live. And we have a special guest joining us today. At some point, we will have NORML political director Morgan Fox with us. I see you in the studio now, Morgan. Now's as good a time as any. Hey, while we are welcoming Morgan, first of all, welcome, Morgan. Second, drop some comments. Let us know where you're watching from. There's Morgan.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. Hi, Morgan. How is it in DC today?
About what you might expect. Lots of chaos.
Well, it's pretty quiet here in Richmond today.
Well, that's good. And honestly, on the cannabis policy front, it's pretty quiet too, at least congressionally. Most of the focus right now is on avoiding a government shutdown, which means that some of the potentially good points that have been included in previous appropriations bills. And for those of you who don't know, appropriations bills are the government funding bills that are all required to be passed if we want to avoid a shutdown, unless Congress decides to pass something called a CR, or continuing resolution, which basically means that the budget from the past year is continued up until said date.
Is that what's most likely to happen?
I think that is pretty much the only possibility to avoid a shutdown, which I think both parties definitely want to avoid. And as long as no additional language is added or subtracted from those, I think that is not necessarily anything that we really have to worry about when it comes to cannabis policy reform. That being said, it does set us up for the continuing budget battle that we have always had to deal with, and all of the many opportunities that we have to be able to insert cannabis specific language into those bills.
Yeah, and before we get into that, let's take a quick second and let some of our more recent viewers. We should have a bunch of people join us on Instagram. Let's let them know what's going on, and let's say hi to some people. Let's say hi to Tony. What up with you, Tony? Hey, James, Samuel, Nick, welcome back. Hey, Mike and Anaheim, good to see you as always. Ben, thank you for joining us again. Hey, Christopher, good to see you. You're not really that late. We were kind of late.
That's all on me.
Also, and then I didn't properly start the stream on Instagram. Whoops.
Sorry, this is too much behind the pod.
Whoa, it's what they're here for. They're here for that. They're here for the honest truth.
Yeah, well, behind the Congress.
That's right. That's what we're doing today. So Morgan is joining us to talk specifically about federal policy. So if you have burning questions about what's going on in Congress with marijuana bills, he's your guy. He's here to answer all of your questions, and he's going to tell us, what we can expect.
I want to put a little bit of a caveat on this because right now in an election year and with so many things going on, Congress has been a little bit of a black box when it comes to certain issues, not necessarily around cannabis, but issues that could potentially impact the ability of cannabis policy reform legislation going forward, as well as things like rescheduling and whatnot. So I think it is important that we maintain the pressure right now when the focus is on other things, but it's also very instructive in terms of what we can learn from the conversations going on right now about what we can do as we move forward, both in the current session as well as preparing for the next session, regardless of who might be in the White House.
Awesome. Okay. So I was going to say, let's see what see what we have going on in the comments, but all we had to do is block someone. Um,
I mean, while we're waiting for questions to come in, I can tell you that you know there has been a significant increase in attention to cannabis policy reform initiatives in Congress over the last couple of months. I think much of this is really tied to the elevation of the issue as an electoral topic. Um, but also because I think that a lot of people are really looking for the youth and undecided votes, and that for better or worse, and for inscrutable reasons, happens to be where a lot of cannabis voters lie.
it's been a really interesting week, hasn't it? With top of the ticket commentary on campus.
It has. I'm not sure that it really bends the needle in any way, shape, or form. Um, but I really want to talk about what's going on right now in Congress. Um, because on the one hand, we've never had more support in Congress for both substantive and incremental reforms. On the other hand, I think that there is a lot of an impression in Congress that everybody needs to wait and see what happens with the DEA rescheduling process. And personally, I think that that's a really bad tactic to take because, at the end of the day, regardless of what the DEA does regarding scheduling, it is going to be incumbent upon Congress to be able to regulate cannabis. And also, clearly, Schedule 3 is not the appropriate schedule for cannabis. And so, if we want to get to where an appropriate scheduling is, which is completely off the schedule, that's going to take an act of Congress too. So I think one of our big jobs over the next year or so, or at the very least, up into and maybe for like a couple of months after DEA actually announces a final rule, which I should take a step back and say that this is potentially going to take years. Anybody that's waiting for the DEA to come out with a final rule in the next couple of months, I think, you really need to look at the precedent of this decision making process because NORML has been involved in this process for many years. I mean, basically since the early 70s. And, on a number of occasions, these petitions have been called and, been promised to be expedited, and they've taken years, if not decades. So we should not be holding out hope that this is going to be something that happens very quickly, regardless of the political environment in which it's happening. And that being said, now the impetus is really on Congress to really look at the multiple forms of legislation available to them to really put cannabis where it belongs, which is not on the schedule of controlled substances.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who weren't able to join us earlier this week on Tuesday, Paul and I did a deep dive into the rescheduling process, talked a lot about how long it could possibly take. And to Morgan's earlier point, this really isn't discussed how it's not an either or. These are two entirely different processes at play. And while this administrative one that is playing out with regard to rescheduling, we can also both simultaneously ask that action by Congress to remove marijuana from CSA altogether. How about we share an action alert for that? Let's do that. I'm going to do that. It's
There's
always
actually another action alert that I do want you to share, but
you
I want to kind of like lead it up a little bit first too, because I want to kind of set the stage a little bit, right? At the moment right now, we're not looking at a political environment where we're really able to get much standalone legislation to move anywhere. I mean, even through hearings or let alone to eventual passage and being signed by a president. This is not necessarily because of, tremendous antipathy towards cannabis policy reform. A lot of this is really just down to timing and availability for time on the schedules of committees of relevance to be able to look at these bills and pass them. Um, also, unfortunately, as much as this is clearly a priority issue to everybody on this call right now, um, it's not necessarily a priority issue to most voters, and also by extension to most lawmakers. So, I think it's very important that we reach out to our lawmakers, no matter where you are, and let them know that this is a priority issue for you. But B, I think that it means that we can uh, continue working to effectuate change, but we have to make sure that it is relevant to lawmakers that are in a position to make that change in a way that is beneficial to them, and not necessarily dependent on the fact that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, speaking of action alerts, and I don't know if this is one that you were leading up to, but I did get a message from someone, and so that Morgan, I'm sure will come back, so that I don't forget, we want to talk about um, clemency while you're here. We should talk about clemency while you're here. Can you? There you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of discussion has happened around like what the Biden administration has done, what a future Harris administration would potentially do, what a future Trump administration might do. I'd like to focus right now on what the current administration can do while it still has the ability to do so. And a huge portion of that is clemency and expanding the scope of the pardons that were initially offered to people that that had very low level possession offenses at the federal level. Um, you know, it is well within the executive power to expand the scope of those pardons to people that might have had nonviolent felonies or distribution charges or things like that were all involved with the prohibition of cannabis, and that were not necessarily associated with extraneous criminal activity. This is something the administration can easily do. There are also a number of open clemency cases for people that got roped up both before and after the announcements for the simple pardons. I should note that those pardons are very date specific, so they are not in perpetuity. It's from the date that they were issued back. So, in order for us to be able to continue to provide relief for people at the executive level, we're going to need continuous announcements of this and continuous pardons. But we're also going to need to start looking at the people that are currently imprisoned or have, potential felony charges against them, and start looking at clemency. There are a number of open cases right now that the administration can and should look at.
Well, the countdown is on, and we shared an action alert in the comments. If you aren't able to see these comments on Instagram, but you can head right over to NORML's Take Action Center, of course, after our show is over. Head to norml.org/act and take a quick second. I mean, literally, it'll take you like 30 seconds to click through and send a message to President Biden and to Congress. That's where that one goes, right? Yep. Tell the White House to expand marijuana pardons and clemency.
Yeah, and this is specifically for the White House. We have a lot of other things that we want to ask Congress to do right now.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, Congress is really not in a position to do much. I mean, it would be amazing if they could, get their heads together and pass, bipartisan, majority supported across demographics legislation. But the simple fact of the matter is that they're not going to do that right now. And even incremental legislation, I think, is going to be really difficult to get across the board. There is some hope that we might be able to get banking, hopefully paired with something like the Hope Act, which would provide federal funding for state and local governments to be able to expedite and help facilitate expungement, as well as for the Graham Act, which would protect Second Amendment rights for cannabis consumers. But a lot of this really depends on timing and availability in the hearing schedules, as well as as I mentioned earlier, politics completely unrelated to cannabis.
Yeah, I do want to answer a question right here. I can see Chris is already sending action alerts. And first of all, Chris, thank you for taking the time to click through and make sure those messages are getting to your electeds. When you send a letter to the White House, to your members of Congress, each one of those offices has a sort of like subject that you have to select. We don't have any control over that. So
We
yeah,
don't do those.
it might be drugs for one office, and it might be criminal justice for another. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which topic you select. It doesn't matter at all. Maybe the wrong intern will get your email, and that's okay. They'll forward it on. Pick whichever one you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really does not matter what sort of topic you put on there as long as you get that message to your lawmakers. So,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. We don't pick those. It's not our fault. Like congressional offices set up those topics, all right? And they also set up like what sort of requirements you have in terms of like your personal information that you want to send them.
Mhm.
We don't collect that information. Like Congress takes that information, not us.
Yeah, and we don't even
They don't do
get
anything
that.
anyway.
That information will not come back to us. Whatever you put in there, it just goes to that office. So
Yeah, I know we've had some concerns about that in the past, but
all
uh,
the time.
yeah, really, it's not an issue.
Yeah.
It's just simply a technical issue that comes up with congressional offices, and we would like them to have a much broader range of topics that you can choose from, but we can't enforce that.
Or none would be cool too.
Yeah, yeah, just
Seems unnecessary.
well, I mean, if I was a congressional intern, I would want some sort of specificity,
Okay, yeah.
but I'm not, so I can put any work on them I want.
We have a few questions here. I don't, we're going to have Morgan here to talk about some federal stuff in the beginning of the show, and I am still going to answer all of your questions. Don't worry. And also, Morgan, it's up to you if you just want to hang out and answer questions with me, or if you want to do your federal stuff and hit the road. But we're getting the same questions over and over, and so I don't want you all to think I'm ignoring you. I am definitely going to answer these. We're
Well, I
getting
can
a lot of,
weigh in. I've got a hard cutoff in 20 minutes, but
so make sure you get your federal questions in while Morgan's here. I am going to say that, we've got some people who have dropped a few comments about arrests happening. I think they're largely related to South Carolina and some kind of flower. Look, if people are out there, I know someone's going to get mad when I say this, and it's okay. If you're selling THCA flower, that's weed. So if it's not legal to sell weed where you're selling your THCA flower, you could potentially run into legal implications for that. But keep trying to make that buck.
yeah,
Uh,
get a lawyer first.
huh?
Get a lawyer first.
Yeah, I understand people don't know what that means, but maybe like don't sell stuff if you don't know what it is. Also, definitely don't buy that stuff. It's gross.
I do want to talk a little bit about. I think some of the things that we could potentially see coming up in Congress over the coming weeks. I think
Yes.
that given that it is an election season, um, we're not going to hear much that is not overly politicized. The fact that the Republican nominee is ostensibly in favor of ending arrests and ostensibly in favor of Amendment 3 in Florida, I think is really important because it really does show the progress that we've made, that like both political opponents and the people that both potentials that could be president of the United States soon are both saying that people should not be arrested for marijuana. That is huge. I think the question is, does or do their statements really, give you an idea of what their policies are going to be going forward? Um, Unfortunately, we only really have track record for one candidate. Um, Candidate Harris has sponsored descheduling initiatives, has been very vocal while the vice president, and candidate Trump has really not much track record at all, and has appointed some people that are strongly anti-cannabis. Um, regardless of what you might feel about each of the individual candidates' positions, I think that it is really important to think about the people that they are going to put in positions of power. that are going to directly affect cannabis policy reform. We have seen that, in the Biden administration, the appointees were okay, not great, but not terrible. Um, the appointees in the Trump administration were pretty terrible. Uh, we really need to think about who the appointees could potentially be going forward. Because, I mean, my personal opinion is that, the office of the presidency is largely symbolic. The real power lies in agency and cabinet appointees. And they define what the policy is going to be going forward. And if we look at the history of who has been appointed uh, by both Harris's predecessor and by Trump himself, I think we have a pretty good idea of the type of people that we're going to be dealing with when we look at cannabis policy reform going into 2024 and 2025, and for the next 4 years. Uh, and while I think a lot of people may say that appointees don't have that much power, it automatically comes down to the power of the presidency and what their position is. I got to tell you, appointees across the board have a significant amount of leeway, and uh, their decision making does not come into question unless it really, really starts to cause problems for the administration. It doesn't matter what party you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Administrative roles have a significant amount of power, and they can do whatever they want until it starts being a pain in the ass for whoever's in the top job.
Speaking of the president's power, slightly tangential, but I think it's a question that we like to answer it over and over again. So have at it, Morgan. While Morgan comes back on screen, I will read to you John's comment. John's question is it possible to have a presidential executive order capable of descheduling cannabis for at least a 4-year period, and that time lighting a fire under Congress to form legislation?
The short answer is no. Uh, the administration a president cannot order cannabis to be descheduled. Um, they can call for a scheduling review. They can very publicly advocate for a specific result. They can urge Congress to do something aside from the administrative process, but they cannot just make it happen with the stroke of a pen. Uh, the way that the CSA is written is that the final power in terms of scheduling resides in the head of the DEA.
Morgan, if you had to choose one federal priority on our Take Action page, which is your top one? Which one of these do you think is the most effective for our supporters to be sending right now?
Well, I think absolutely the most important one is urging the administration to do what it can while it can to alleviate some of the harms caused by the war on cannabis. And that is specifically expanding the scope of the pardons that the administration has offered earlier, and actively pursuing clemency for the cases that are open right now, as well as any future cases that might come on over the next couple of months. Uh, there's very little opportunity for the administration to influence the rescheduling process. There's very little opportunity for the administration to do much of anything at this point. But what it absolutely does have the power to do is expand the scope of the pardons that it historically offered to cannabis consumers and people that have been caught up in the government's war on cannabis, and make sure that as many people as possible are benefited by this change of paradigm about how we're thinking about cannabis.
I went ahead and shared that action alert again in the comments. It's tell the White House to expand marijuana pardons and clemency. If you haven't yet sent that action alert, please do. If you've already sent that one, then go pick another one and send that one.
I mean, check that out, and also highly recommend checking out the Countdown for Clemency action that's going on with NORML and a bunch of other groups that are really trying to push the administration to do every single thing it possibly can to alleviate the harms that have been caused by or by prohibition, um, while it still has the ability to do so, regardless of what the outcomes of the election in November are.
If you're watching on Instagram, you can see our reel for Countdown for Clemency on NORML's Instagram. If you're watching anywhere else, you can get the link to that in the comments now. But it has a nice little explainer, I think, in that video.
So,
All right.
just talking about like what we're looking at for the rest of the session. Um, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I think that it's very unlikely that we're going to get standalone legislation passed, but I think that there are still some options available for us in the lame duck. I don't think anything is going to move at all up until the election. This is not necessarily a political issue in that, like, cannabis is not being politicized with regard to individual standalone legislation. What is being politicized is that most lawmakers are busy politicking. They're out there on the campaign trail, so they are not necessarily working on legislation. However, in the lame duck, uh, we have some serious potentials for passing legislation, both with banking legislation as well as potentially employment protection legislation. Um, of all of the various cannabis policy reform bills that have been proposed during the 118th Congress. Um, so we saw movement on safe banking in the Senate for the first time ever, and we saw that it was successful. But now we're at a little bit of loggerheads right now because until we get more Republican senators co-sponsoring it, it's very unlikely for that to move. And if it doesn't move in the Senate, it's very unlikely for it to move in the House, despite the fact that on the House side, it's getting significantly more co-sponsors. I think we're up to almost 130 now. But the only bill that has moved on the House side as a standalone has been the Cure Act. That's HR 5040. This legislation would basically protect people from being discriminated against for past cannabis use if they are applying for federal employment or security clearances. This is incredibly important because a lot of people consume cannabis, and eliminating past consumers from the talent pool is detrimental to not only the functioning of federal government but also our national security and safety. But also, as the one of the biggest employers in the country, the federal government owes itself to and owes to the general public that are uniformly uh, in favor of cannabis policy reform and legalization to get in line with the American people and to adjust to what the workforce is like.
Yeah, in states that have a significant number of federal employees, it can be difficult to write clean code, to write laws that are easy to read when you have to make all of these exceptions for different, federal restrictions that employers, even private employers, may be subject to.
Exactly. And this shouldn't even be an issue. Past cannabis use should not be an issue whatsoever. But unfortunately, in government employment and even more unfortunately in private employment, oftentimes it is a problem, and it creates a barrier to gainful employment and being able to live a normal life. This is definitely true, and probably even more so when you're looking at federal employment, where there's even more oversight into your background than if you were trying to get a job almost anywhere else. So we think this legislation is really, really important, and also it does have more momentum than pretty much any other standalone bill other than safe banking in the Congress right now. It's we had a safe banking hearing in the Senate side, but on the House side, the only hearing we've had on cannabis policy reform, the only like legitimate hearing, has been on the Cure Act. And While initially the sponsor, Jamie Raskin, wanted it to include current cannabis use, which I think was the right move, in order to get buy-in from GOP leadership in that particular committee and across the board. He was unfortunately forced to water it down a little bit to only pass cannabis use, which is still incredibly important because so many people have been denied the opportunity to work for the federal government or to get security clearances for important top level work that keep us safe because they were once a cannabis consumer. And this bill passed the House Oversight Committee after uh, the compromise had been made to make it only for past use by a 30-14 margin in a Republican controlled committee, with the Republican chair voting strongly in favor of it.
Nice.
I think that that's a huge, huge issue. Now, on the Senate side, there was no companion bill up until recently. Senator Gary Peters introduced the acronym is very long, but it's unfortunately called the Doobie Act. But this actually
Very
has the
unfortunate.
ability to get a hearing in the Senate. So we've had one Senate hearing on safe banking, and then basically not much movement on anything since then. But since Senator Peters, who is the sponsor of the Doobie Act, which basically does the same thing as the Cure Act in protecting people from discrimination in federal employment or security clearances for past cannabis use, he's also the chair of the committee that has first jurisdiction on that. That's the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. They have a hearing next week, and this bill is on it. So I highly recommend that everybody. I'll put the link in the chat for that.
Just did.
Oh, you got it. All right.
In there.
On top of it. So we want to get as many people as possible to be voicing their support for this particular bill, even though it's an incremental piece of legislation. It only affects people that are current federal employees or are trying to get federal employment. It's a really big deal. So
It is.
I highly recommend everybody push to get their lawmakers to support it in advance of this hearing that's coming up on the 18th.
And I think it's worth. I love that you told that story about Raskin, Morgan, because it it is the perfect example of something we talk about a lot on this show about not. First of all, understanding the reality of the political climate you're trying to operate in, and then having that knowledge, then being willing to use it and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Would current cannabis use have been much better? Of course, but he was able to see that that was not a path forward, and rather than give up everything, take his ball and go stand in the corner, he said, "Okay, let's compromise on this," and look at the momentum he gained by doing so.
Could not agree more. You know, bipartisan, like you definitely have to stick to your guns at some points, but bipartisan approval in a heavily politicized committee and with that sort of margins, like basically like three-quarter margins on a bill that actively recognizes that you can be a cannabis consumer and still be a functional member of the federal government and of the national security apparatus is huge. So I think that that was an excellent compromise on their point. As much as I mean, I helped write some of the language that protected current cannabis users on that legislation, and I was okay with seeing that tossed out the door in order to get that kind of a bipartisan vote.
Um, sorry, I desperately want to believe this comment has some insider joke to it, but I think Christopher's just being bold. And if I have to be subjected to these questions, I think Morgan deserves one. Morgan, have you ever rolled a joint from a page of a book?
Are you talking about from the King Jameses in a hotel room?
Okay.
Well, because I saw the actual question on the Charon, and I was like, all right, from the pages of a Bible. Okay, I mean, yeah, but
Is there a reason why, Christopher, you're asking Morgan that question?
yeah, I'm kind of curious about that too. Um, but I mean, like when in need, like you figure out. I mean, I was a Boy Scout for many years, so you have to be prepared, and you figure out how to use what is available to you in order to accomplish your purposes. So if you happen to need to smoke a joint or to consume cannabis in some way, you're going to figure out a way to do it. Um, it does help to have a little bit of like camping training and maybe some engineering to help out with that process, but this is something that I think is accessible to anybody with a little bit of ingenuity and open-mindedness. Just as the cannabis policy reform movement is, really geared towards people with those same skills. So if you think that you can figure out how to develop an amazing smoking tool out of some bits and pieces lying around in your garage, I think that with a little bit of reading and preparation, you can apply those same skills to talking to your lawmakers.
There you go. Yes, I was in fact pouring a stiff one of chai. Thank you for noticing. Of course, it was Christopher. Oh! Thank you, Christopher, because Morgan does. I know you have to go, Morgan. So, you've watched this show before, Morgan. What's your favorite type of cannabis?
I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite cultivar. There are so many available right now. The lack of criminalization in so many places has really led to a just an explosion of innovation when it comes to breeding and genetics and things like that. Um, and I think that in large part. The adult use market has been pretty good at providing an avenue for that. Um, you know, Not always the case, but uh, if I had to really answer that, I don't think I have a particular cultivar that I'm a like a diehard fan of. I do like stuff that's a little bit more on the like mid to low range THC, and that is like really really heavy on the fruity and piney terpenes. So if anybody has any cultivars that they're growing right now, please feel free to send me genetic material. It's legal for me to grow personal amounts in DC, and I would love to pop some of your seeds.
There you go. Aren't you glad you asked, Christopher? Is probably a far more exciting answer than I will ever give you.
And if I'm able to grow them, I'll turn them up on this podcast in 9 months.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, everyone's super happy uh, that you've joined us. Um, you've been dubbed a true stoner.
I'm actually a microdoser.
Show's gone sideways very quickly.
No, I really
uh,
enjoy cannabis, but I'm an old man. And I've got too much stuff going on. I need to just like slowly titrate my consumption.
oh my God, this is hilarious. Okay. Thank you. You've received the standing ovation in the comments. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And like I said, we've got a lot of work to do. So please make sure to hit up that ACT page and hit your members of Congress up for any and every option you can. We got to get this moving, and the only way we can is if all their staffers are hearing so much noise that they elevate it up to the staffers above them, and then the staffers above them elevate it to the bosses.
Well, thank you, Morgan. This audience is great, and they are so motivated, and they always send action alerts. So appreciate you joining today and sharing some insights with them. And we'll have you back on soon.
Great. Talk to y'all soon. Have a good weekend.
All right, friends, let's get into your 8 million questions, which have been wildly entertaining. No, it's not vodka, it is chai. And I don't know if felons can vote in Florida. That was a question that I got asked a lot. Anyone who is in Florida, who knows Florida law, maybe let me know if felons. I know it's a serious question. I don't know if felons can vote in Florida. Let's see. I'm gonna take a quick look through the comments and see what I can get into. I know we did some comments about THCA. Talked about rescheduling. Anthony, if you're still here, you asked if judges can legally smoke in their state. So if it's legal in a state for someone to use cannabis for adult use or medical use, then yes, one would be able to consume cannabis if it's legal for either of those purposes. In regard to employment protection, that's an entirely separate issue, and that's going to vary state by state. Happy Friday to you, the Cole memo. Kyle, I love your question. Kyle asks how many states that legalize would it how many states would it legal states would it take to force Congress to act on marijuana legislation? There's no magic number. There's no magic number. What's magic about Congress is that they're elected by us, and so we get to make that choice. And if we stop electing people who are terrible on cannabis policy, then we will stop getting terrible cannabis policy. Also, once someone's in office, you need to just keep messaging them, reaching out to them on the issues you'd like to see move forward. Of course, NORML's Take Action Center has a lot of action alerts that make it super easy for you to contact your federal as well as your state lawmakers on pending cannabis legislation. Unfortunately, Kyle, there is no magic number. It's just we've got to vote better and we've got to talk to our electeds about this issue in a serious way, in a way that lets them know that this is meaningful and with a lot of coordinated voices. It wasn't orange juice, it was chai. Yeah, Scott, that's a great comment. Scott says we should all support most any legislation which changes the past current laws with which restrict usage. And it's okay to take small steps forward. You know, it's not perfect. We don't, we all want everything. We want it now, but that's not how the political process works. And if someone mentioned Georgia earlier, and we hear about Georgia a lot on this show, and it's just been a little bit of movement in Georgia. Georgia, Texas, and Virginia all started with exactly the same limited medical cannabis proposal. A single condition, intractable epilepsy, not even like completely legal, just sort of affirmative defense or whatever that state had, and oil only, like CBD is what I think what they called it back in those dark ages. They called it the epilepsy CBD bill. Virginia got that bill, and then 6 years later we had adult use because we were willing to just put one foot in front of the other and get there. Georgia can barely get product into people's hands. And Texas, I think Texas has kind of done okay rolling out their teacup program. They have expanded it, but they have this like weird list of conditions, which is also antiquated. Anyhow, the point is you have something and you can keep improving that, right? It's just taking those incremental steps is okay. It's okay that you didn't get everything you wanted first go round, and just keep moving forward. Same thing if you're in a state where you don't have anything. You gotta figure out what is even possible in your state, and maybe it's just a really limited use bill. That's okay. It's okay to start where you have to. Oh, I have to do the news too. I forgot about that. Oh, I don't think you will, but that's fine. Charlie, your comments are killing me. That's hilarious. I did tell him the correct answer, Christopher, but he did not read my chat. I will let him know that, Christopher, since we're both directors at NORML, I'm glad that you think that he is capable. Phew, give that man a raise. He's my lateral colleague, but okay. Staff. What is the email? Oh, what you mean? What email to contact us? You can contact us at normal@normal.org. We all get that email. I actually read them, but we all get them. Normal@normal.org. No, Ryan, I don't think it would. Ryan says if all states legalize use and retail, even if just for medical use, would that force Congress to act? Nope. I am not of that opinion. Yeah, they could. Yes, absolutely. They could. Yes. Well, not, I don't think forever, because old people die. And then when we have fewer old people, then we can do things that, belong in this century, like ending marijuana arrests. Yeah. So no, I don't think that there's a magic number. I don't think that there's a tipping point. We're well past the halfway tipping point with medical. And we're at the halfway tipping point with adult use. What state has the? I don't know. Look, I don't know if there is this. I don't. That's a lot, Christopher. That's a lot to say. Christopher asked which state has the best cannabis laws right now. In what regard? Because some states have really excellent consumer safety provisions. Some states have a lot of dispensaries. Some states have super easy expungement. I guess it just depends on what you're looking for. Jessica, thank you for your question. Jessica asked if there's any news on when adult use retail will be coming to Virginia. There's no news because we still have the same governor. So we will have another legislative session in Virginia in 2025, January 2025. You are likely to see the same bills that we saw in 2024, honestly, because people who are serious, and I'm not saying that the existing cannabis bills, I'm not saying that the bills from 2024 are serious. I'm saying that people who are serious about cannabis policy know that 2025 doesn't really matter because this governor is still not going to do anything. So are we going to burn a lot of energy on these bills that were bad in 2024? I mean, we are, because they're going to come back in 2025 and be just as bad, and we're going to still try again. But collectively, the people who the actual adults in the room are focused on 2026 under what is hopefully, who is hopefully a much different governor. There are two ways it can go in Virginia, and it's not like America in this situation. There will be two. There are already two leading candidates for governor in Virginia, and they are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to cannabis. One of them knows my name when they see me in public. The other one also knows my name, but won't even recognize what NORML does when we're in the Senate chamber, the Senate gallery. They just say, I hope you enjoy seeing how your government works. Okay, anyhow, that was a rabbit hole. Nothing. There's no news. Nothing's happening. Vote, Virginia. Stop making bad choices. I don't know. I think, again, deschedule now says the southern and midwestern state holdouts are waiting for the end of federal prohibition before they go about medical or adult. I think it's more. I don't think that. I think that that's something that could maybe force those legislatures to take action. But I don't think they're intentionally waiting. I think they don't like the issue. They have these are not states necessarily with ballot initiatives. These are states that would likely have to do so through the legislature. They don't have legislatures that uh, they have more conservative controlled legislatures. Let's say that, and those legislatures are usually loath to advance cannabis expansion legislation. Oh wow, Samuel, thank you. I gotta get the flipping news open too. Thank you, Chair. You got me back on track, Samuel. Let's talk about Cherokee. Did you know you can buy legal cannabis inside the geographical area of North Carolina now? What? Okay, so cannabis is not legal in North Carolina unless you're in Cherokee, unless you're in the Qualla boundary. This is the western land of the eastern band of Cherokee Indians. It's called Cherokee. It's called the Qualla boundary. Most importantly, it's called the place where you can go buy legal cannabis inside North Carolina. They began sales this week. Samuel said it went well. And Samuel also says Cherokee sold so much product over the weekend, they were closed Monday and Tuesday. I believe it. I didn't put the freaking things in here like I was supposed to. I think I'll find y'all some news. I don't know. It's my job, Chris. It's my job. It's what I do. That's probably not a helpful answer. Chris says, what keeps me inspired or determined in all of this? I just kind of selfishly showed up in the beginning, not really. I had met Keith's pause. I had cancer twice. It was terrible. Like right in a row. And I like knew medical cannabis was a thing. Like, and I understood it as a concept, but it wasn't a thing we had in Virginia. And I had to have a stem cell transplant, and the chemo that I had for my stem cell transplant causes more cancer. So I became super like not obsessed, but I like was fixated on, is it coming back a third time? Am I going to die am I going to get leukemia from this chemotherapy that I just had? And that's where I got to learn more about options that patients in other states had to survive, not even to feel better during it, but like to survive cancer. And I happened to meet Keith Stropp, the founder of NORML, at a legal seminar. And he was like, "Oh, you should." I was like, "That's terrible. You should go back and get involved in Virginia." And I was so naive. I was like, "Okay, sure." And I did. And the short version is I just kept showing up, and then it went from I just kind of selfishly wanted to change the law in case I got sick again to now this is what I do. So what keeps me, I don't know that inspired is the right word, but determined is people's lives are ruined by public policies that are not evidence-based. There's no reason for these terrible laws, and we can change them. I've changed them in my state. I've changed many of them in state. There are words that I wrote down on paper that are now in the code of Virginia. And right, I get that's inspiring. Like you can show up. You can just by showing up make enough of a difference that it impacts the lives of millions of people. And that to me is powerful. And that is That's why I keep doing this. Thanks for asking. That was weird. What? Listen, I don't even understand how to answer that question, so I gotta keep scrolling. Thanks. Yeah, Christopher. Christopher says if Florida legislators were worth a damn, well, it's Florida. They'd have a set of laws on standby to pass if when Amendment 3 passes. Look, I have no doubt that there is someone in the legislature who is not insane that has legislation for subsequent licensing prepared. MK and Small World, thank you for your comments. Awesomeness reduction. Oh my God. Okay. Here's some news. I'm going to give you some news real quick. My favorite one that Samuel got me on track for, then I got off track for, is North Carolina. Again, members of the North Carolina Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians began selling cannabis products to adults 21 and older. They had begun adult use sales to tribal members earlier, but now it is anyone 21 or older. That's news number one. News number two. This one is less. This is less good, but like woof, literally woof. Judges on the Tennessee Supreme Court ruled that drug dog alerts still constitute probable cause for some marijuana related searches. It's not all, but for some. So neat. When we legalized in Virginia, there were so many news stories about the drug dogs and how they were going to have to retire. And I don't know, we were supposed to be sad about that or something. It was weird. Okay, next, moving on to the next news. Again, this is another court case. The Fourth Circuit, this is U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, the Fourth Circuit, that's actually here, located here in Richmond. They were hearing a case about an employee who was fired for using hemp products. Now, ultimately, the judges did uphold the termination. They upheld that. They said, yeah, to the employer, you can fire this person. Because they didn't, the person who was fired, they didn't provide sufficient evidence that the products they were using actually contained THC at or below the federal definition of hemp. But in this ruling, the Fourth Circuit totally contradicts DEA's opinion on the legality of these hemp-derived synthetics. So it's an interesting read. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for being here. It's an interesting read. It's a wild ruling. It's, you know how much I love that stuff. Oh, thank you, Samuel, for sharing. Samuel said that at the dispensary in Cherokee, they put your purchase in adult-proof bags in a child-proof bag that are hard to open. Yeah, that's exit bags. It's pretty common to have exit bags. Virginia doesn't have exit bags, but guess why? Okay, Christopher. Oh, I can't wait to hear what that's about. Okay, one last story. And this is one of those where you're like, yeah, I know, but that's okay. We have to say the same things over and over again because there's so much information coming out about these same topics. Like, hopefully, the more you're like, hey, did you know that another study said this? Are you listening yet? Okay, patients with neuropathy, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, other rheumatic conditions like these frequently substitute cannabis in place of prescription drugs. I know you're surprised. I know you're surprised. Uh, yes. So there's a question about Virginia asking if um, medical cannabis license holders can sell their licenses to other companies. Yes, they can. There's nothing in code that prohibits them from selling. Hello, Mrs. Dredd, who just joined us on Instagram. If you want to read that paper, you can find it in the news section on the NORML website. Just go to normal.org, click on news, and you'll see the you'll see the news release. It's called Survey: Patients with Rheumatic Conditions Frequently Substitute Cannabis for Prescription Medications. I'm glad you joined us as well. Did I do all the news? I did all the news. Great. Yay. Oh, we did have another piece pop up today that I forgot to include in here. Jessica, I'm taking that as a high five. Thank you. Oh, someone mentioned this earlier. It's funny, Paul and I were talking about this same thing about, well, this seems like a thing we've said over and over again recently, but let's say it again. A rising percentage of older adults are turning to cannabis. What was really interesting about not these data. I mean, what was really interesting about these data is that AARP was behind the study, at least in portion. That's what kind of makes you go, huh? Oh, okay. Yeah, we published on that earlier today. There you go, Christopher. I see you in your questions. Oh, Mrs. Dredd, we have so many studies that we've written about on those issues, and in particular, I don't know why I always put this book away. I'm gonna have to forget it. We have this book, Clinical Applications for Cannabis and Cannabinoids: A Review of the Recent Scientific Literature. This is available in paperback in the NORML store. It's at store.normal.org. It's available in the Amazon Kindle ebook store, and it's an ebook, and it's available in its totality on the NORML website. You can read all of these sections as well as find PDFs of the sections in the Medical Marijuana Research Library on the NORML website. But if you're looking for information to share with people, we have there's a whole section on fibromyalgia in here. Let's do a quick through and see. We have written, we've covered a lot of neuropathy as well. You can also just use the search bar at the top of the NORML website and put in neuropathy or fibro, and you'll get a lot of results. Link to the wrap up in the wall, Christopher. Oh my goodness, I thought it was the regular. That was the regular question. This is a different one. Okay. Okay. Did I share that? I did share that. I guess those were all the news. Okay, we have a few. There's a few events coming up that I'm going to share with you all. Christopher, I see you. Okay. Our Florida chapter, Suncoast Normal, does a show on Sunday mornings called The Rotation. It's on YouTube. You can jump in the rotation with Suncoast Normal Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. Find them at Suncoast Normal on YouTube. This is gonna be your Florida heavy. Florida heavy. But you know what? They've got a pending constitutional amendment on their ballot, so let's go Florida today. NORML Tallahassee is having their chapter meeting on September 17th. That's a Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can find out info for that on Facebook at NORML Tallahassee. NORML Tallahassee has an event the following week on September 25th. That's a Wednesday. I bet he does, Christopher. NORML Tallahassee has a networking event September 25th at 6 p.m. Eastern. Again, you can find out full details for that on NORML Tallahassee's Facebook. I think they have the info on their website as well. It's normaltallahassee.org. Had to make sure. All right. One not Florida event and then one more Florida event. Lehigh Valley NORML is hosting a lobby day in Pennsylvania. It is October 1st. I hope that's right. Did I write that incorrectly? Let's just take a quick peek. Tuesday, October 1st, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm going to share the Eventbrite for that. If you're watching on Instagram, Lehigh Valley NORML is on Instagram, so you can find them as well. But yeah, if you're in Pennsylvania, go to lobby day, please. Please go lobby your legislators. I'm also going to add, please wear adult clothing and don't smell like weed. Those are like my top two tips for how to talk to your lawmakers about cannabis. Dress like you're going to a job interview. Don't smell like weed. There you go. You might be one of the people, you might be one of the few people in the group who doesn't, and that's okay. The point of talking to your lawmakers is so that they can hear what you have to say. You want them to listen to you. And whether it's fair or not, if your lawmakers are distracted by how you look, or if you smell like weed or whatever, they're not listening to what you're saying. So just for that one day. It's not you're not there to express yourself with your fashion. You're just there to fit in and talk about what can be a really difficult topic for them, if you want to be effective. No, Christopher, wearing deodorant, look, I was just going to say that's a given, and I probably shouldn't have. But, like, you need to just smell clean and not like weed or sweat, which probably, like, don't be distracting in the way you appear. That includes fragrance. I know it sounds like harsh or whatever, but it's look, it's already difficult to talk to your lawmakers about weed. Don't make it more difficult for everyone. I know people are like, oh, but I'm there to express my personal freedom. Whatever. I'm there to move public policy. You're welcome, Christopher. You're welcome, Chris. You're welcome. Yes, Patchouli's totally fine, Samuel. Okay. One. When people know what that means, but you know. Actually, I think now it just means you're a goth kid. 25 words or less. Jesus. You guys are unhinged and I'm here for it. The NORML Key West legal seminar is December 5 through 7. December 5th through December 7th in Key West, obviously. It's at the Pier House Resort and Spa. If you are an attorney who needs CLEs, great. NORML legal seminars are fully accredited in every state that requires CLEs for their practicing attorneys. If you don't need CLEs or you're not an attorney, great. We have a discounted rate for you. This is a really excellent opportunity to connect with legal experts from around the country in a relaxed atmosphere and, you know, make new friends who will share your opposition to cannabis prohibition. Plus, you get to hang out with me and Keith and Paul. Now, someone mentioned earlier, yes, this is going to conflict a little bit with the federal, with the DEA hearing for us, but good old Morgan's going to be in DC, so hopefully Morgan's going to live stream, or at least live tweet from the hearings while the rest of us are down there. Unfortunately, we don't get to reschedule either of those things, so we're just going to figure out how it goes. I mean, it's before most of the people leave. Like, I think Paul will still be up here. I won't be. Hello again, Brian. Christopher, please don't ask your state lawmaker to do that. Okay, we did it all. We did all of the things. We did. Candid, yeah. Don't. Yes, clean your face. We'll just say that. Clean your look clean, neat, presentable. Good stuff. Vacation. Christopher, I wish I were going on vacation. It must be lovely to go on vacation down there. It's delightful to work there also, but I'm just saying. It's not my experience. Okay, where's your comment? Where's the comic relief courtesy of Christopher? Thank you. It's not a show if Christopher doesn't ask. What's my favorite type of cannabis? For those of you who were here when Morgan talked about his favorite type of cannabis, please be prepared to be disappointed. My favorite type of cannabis is legal cannabis. Thank you for asking. Nick, I'm sad you can't make it to Lobby Day in Pennsylvania. Also, boo. But you know, you can always go another day. All right, friends, this has been a blast. I hope that you have a super fantastic weekend. Yes. Oh, I did see some comments that were actually thanks, Morgan. All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with us on a Friday afternoon. We try to do this show every Friday, and sometimes we do special ones as well. If there's a topic you would like to see us cover specifically, let me know. At the top of the list right now, we're going to do probably another election one, but guns and weed. That's a popular topic. So, we're kicking that one around as well. Let me know if there's one in particular. If there's one in particular that you all would like us to do a special episode of Live with Normal to cover. Hey, everyone, hit that like, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching so you never miss when Normal goes live. Oh, I forgot we have a TikTok, and I need you to follow us on TikTok. Even if you're old like me, that's okay. You can still follow us on the TikTok. If you follow us on the TikTok, I'll make more content for the TikTok. On TikTok, we are normal.org. That's how you find us on TikTok, at normal.org. All right, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining us. I love your questions. You all are so energizing and engaging, and I love chatting with you all on Fridays. So join me back here next week. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.